Talking with Ted Nash in anticipation of the Sound of Democracy coming to coming to Hancher Auditorium, the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra Septet, which features Ted Nash among others, and Wynton Marsalis, of course. It's tomorrow night, Tuesday night, starting at 7:30. Now, this is a $20 per household thing where you can spend $20 and you can watch it all you want for the next 72 hours. It actually happens at 7:30 on Tuesday night. They'll send you a link once you pay your money, and you can go use it as often as you want for 72 hours. And Ted will be part of that. Ted will be on screen for you. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be here. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's so great to talk about all of this. I mean, I know you have a lot of questions, but I just want to say I appreciate your getting in touch and allowing people to hear something about this gig, which has been very exciting.
Absolutely. Another exciting thing, and you probably don't know us, but I was actually one of the people that gave you some money for your presidential suite back in the day, which won the Grammy Award back then.
Because of you, thank you.
Well, not because of me, but because of your just a wonderful, wonderful project that was. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that meant to you?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Just to start, someone told me once to embrace your mythology, which is sort of who you are, how you grew up, what your parents were like, the place you lived, all of these things. And I think that a lot of people run away from who they are most of their lives. Like, it's like when you finally realize that you can just be who you are and embrace all these things that formed you and made you who you are, I think you're more successful at getting to an artistic statement because we're expressing something that's honest. And if I go back to when I was very, very young, single digit, my parents were civil rights activists. And just growing up in that household and an awareness of politics, an awareness of people, and everybody's the same and everybody treats the same kind of treatment and deserves the same kind of, treatment. And that informed a lot of, I think, of who I am and how I think and what I believe in, but I haven't really spent a lot of time addressing that. And I would say that Presidential Suite was the first time where I sort of expressed my feeling towards politics in the sense of human rights, civil rights, and freedom, which my parents fought so hard for. And so the speeches that I chose for Presidential Suite, if people don't know what it is, I've transcribed 8 different speeches that had to do with human rights and freedom. And I used that thematic material, those tones, those pitches, to create the melodies and a lot of the context. But the speeches were all about freedom and about human rights. So that's what the theme of that project was. And it was somewhat timely in that we had our CD release concert the night of the election in November of 2016 and the following night as well. So yeah, that's one of the larger projects that I've been involved with, and one that was challenging, took a lot of work, but was very gratifying.
Speaking with Ted Nash, who's going to be part of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Septet, performing Tuesday night for Hancher Auditorium. We'll get a little bit to the Democracy Project, but I'd like to find out what the COVID thing has done for you. I know it's just wiped out so many things for jazz musicians in New York City. I think people are just starting now to be able to record things online and do things. I know I've been seeing some things from Smalls, and I think Birdland and Blue Note have been doing some things online, but obviously those are without audiences and such. How has this all affected you, and what have you been up to during this time, these last 6-7 months?
Yeah, well, I think I share the experience with so many of my colleagues and friends and people who are in this business and in other industries, obviously, where we're just trying to get back on our feet and figure out how to deal with this. Keeping creative, practicing your instrument is something that we easily can do. I mean, we've got all this time and we're home where we can practice and we can work on music. And for a little while, it was sort of like a weird sort of, okay, here's the situation. Now I'm going to really I'm going to practice. I'm going to write music. I'm going to record some stuff. I'm going to write a book. You get all excited about stuff.
Right.
Slowly you start to feel like, wait a minute, this is great, but something is missing. And I mean, we could talk about the tragedy of the virus and so many other things that are going on in the world right now. But when it just comes down to this, it has been a real challenge. And I think one of the great things about the septet getting together again is that we were able to vibrate in the same room. We were able to get our energy and blow through our instruments and play, and all the vibrations from these instruments could gather in one space again. For the first time, we've been doing all this virtual stuff and sending stuff, and it's been great. But we've just spent a month, including the Hancher concert that's coming up, doing a lot of outdoor concerts because we really can't play indoors. We did a residency in Chautauqua, New York. That was indoors, but our audience was remote. But just to give you a feeling of what it was like to play again, we got to the end of our very last concert, which is a couple days ago, and Obed Calvert, our drummer, just kind of slumped down in his chair at the very end of our concert. We just finished our last note, and Carlos was kind of messing with him, Carlos, our bass player, and we realized that Obed was feeling something so deeply that he kind of broke down. And when we acknowledged it, because we understood what he was feeling, he started to cry. And then we all got full. And then Wynton went backstage and kind of talked with him to say, yeah, man, yeah, brother, I'm with you. This is heavy. And it was just the feeling of the spirituality of being able to play together again was overwhelming. And we all felt it. And it was deep. It was deep.
That's cool. Very, very cool. Talk a little bit about how you got involved initially, because you've been with them a long time with the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra, and a little bit about that experience over the years.
Well, it's been incredible. I mean, you have to go back to when in the 80s, when Wynton and I are about the same age. So I was with the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra and playing with Jerry Mulligan's big band and doing some things that were, pretty high level, but not anywhere near the level that Wynton had achieved in the early to mid 80s. He really became sort of, I don't know, I had him on a pedestal because I loved his music. I thought he was one of the most creative musicians at the time. And of course, he was headlining all the festivals. He was making these beautiful records and winning Grammy Awards and all of this stuff. And I always wished at that time, I was like, I hope someday I have a chance to meet him or even play with him. And you don't even know if you could go ahead 10 years at any point in your life, you'd be so surprised by what happens, what develops. But you look in hindsight and you see the natural development of it. So to be able to not only play with Wynton, but be in a band with him for over 20 years, to have him play on some of my recordings, I can't express how grateful I am for that opportunity. And not just musically, but Wynton is extremely inspiring as a person. He comes to the gig always wanting to play his best, always taking the music seriously, doesn't come with a huge ego. He teaches us about how to bring humility to the gig and absolute dedication.
I kind of think of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra kind of as an America's repertory ensemble, but it's so much more than that, because you're doing your own things too. And how valuable is it to have that orchestra and those musicians when you're doing projects of your own, and you can say, I can use this orchestra, I can use these people for my own, and it's got to be a valuable thing for you.
So when I joined the band, it was 1998. So we're going back about 22 years. And it was largely a repertory orchestra. And I knew that because the whole reason Jazz at Lincoln Center began was as a tribute to Duke Ellington. They did a series of concerts at Lincoln Center. And when I joined the band, they had already been in existence for 10 years and still was largely a repertory orchestra, but also playing a lot of Wynton's music. So that's when I joined the band, it was either Wynton's music or it was stuff that had been recorded and written many years before. Mm-hmm. So I understood that and was happy to do it. And like I said, so thrilled to be with Wynton and all these incredible musicians. But as those first few years, I would say within those first 10 years, Wynton started to say, hey, we have people in this orchestra who have experience writing music, or maybe just he feels are talented and could kind of pick up on the vibe of what's happening. And he started to allow us to arrange music and compose and arrange music. And I was one of the early people that he allowed to do that, and because I had more experience, I think, composing. I had done some for Mel Lewis. And that choice, well, embracing the creativity of the band also helped develop kind of a new direction for the band. I think a musical voice that is truly original at this point. It's no longer a repertory orchestra. We do play older music, and there's such great music from the last
Hmm.
100 years that I think deserves being heard, and I think people deserve to hear it. But in 1999, for example, we only played Duke Ellington because that was the centennial of his birth, and
Hmm.
I was actually fearful of the year. I was like, oh my God, am I going to make it through this year of playing Satin Doll every night? And not realizing that there's 1,500 to 2,000 compositions, and we did dive into a lot of his repertoire, and I learned so much about music in that one year. So no, it's been incredible. And you also asked about writing for the members of the band, and that's an incredible privilege to know intimately how everybody plays, and for them to know how you play. So when we do compose and we do arrange, we can choose like who am I hearing on this plunger mute solo, or on this whatever, or on this clarinet thing. We can make choices based on our intimate knowledge of the band.
Of Pinecone and Warm Daddy, and have you ever picked up a nickname, Ted?
Really, no. It's funny because a lot of those nicknames sort of came about when Wynton had his smaller bands. So,
Mm.
Herlin Riley at the time was always called Homie because he's from New Orleans, and Wynton has the nickname Skane. Not even sure what that's from. Warm Daddy, Pine Cone, or Cone. We just got to call Wycliffe Gordon Cone, Wes Anderson Warm Daddy, and those were, you know, after a while, because you hear other people calling them that. Like I always called Herlin Riley Homie. I never called him anything else. And I often would say to Wes Anderson, Warm. We would just call him Warm. And Cone. I never called Wycliffe anything but Cone for years. So, but I don't think I ever had any, not in front of me anyway. Maybe behind my back there are some names.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
how did the septet come out? We're talking with Ted Nash, the Jazz at Lincoln Center Septet, performing "The Sound of Democracy" Tuesday night in a virtual performance. Um, how did they, out of all those people, did you come up with that particular septet? I mean,
Well,
were there, obviously there wasn't auditions and such, but somebody had something in mind and they knew the voices they heard, I guess. Huh?
yeah, well, if you look at the septet, and if you're familiar with the band, you'll see that it's basically members of Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra. We don't have a regular drummer in our chair for drums. So
Mm.
Obed has been doing a number of our things in the months before the pandemic. So he was the one that Wynton asked to do this. But otherwise, everybody, the other six members, are all members of the big band. And so we have Carlos Enriquez on bass, Dan Nimmer on piano, and then the horns, Wynton, me, Elliot Mason on trombone, and Walter Blanding. And I think that there were a number. I mean, I never was really privy to a conversation about how they chose the septet, but it's funny because we have band calls every Thursday. We get together at 3 o'clock, and we have a Zoom meeting just to keep the band connected and talk about projects. And there has been a lot of little recording things that we've done, and different projects, and education, lots of education. There was a conversation about how, well, these gigs in October are just going to feature the septet. So my reaction was like, oh, okay, so this is stuff I'm not going to be involved with, because I've never really played in the septet. I've done small band gigs with Wynton, but I've never been a regular member of his small band.
Hmm.
So all of a sudden I was getting emails like, yeah, here are the septet gigs, and da-da-da. I'm like, wait a minute, am I part of this? And they're like, yeah. And the decision was, I think, based on a few things. The people who are closest to New York, number one, because we have people who live in other cities that would require getting on an airplane. And I think
Mm.
just to kind of keep to minimize the risk of
Sure.
exposure to the virus was the main thing. Elliot, me, Walter, Wynton, the rhythm section, we all live in New York City. So I think it made sense to put together a band of people that could just drive to gigs. So we didn't have to get any public transportation really, or things like that. So I think that was one. And also Wynton probably just thought about the configuration. It's about the size of it allowed us to have still some interesting orchestrational opportunities, but also kept it intimate in a small band setting. So when we got together for this recording that we did at the Appel Room for the Hancher, was the first time that any of us had played with other musicians in the same room.
Hmm.
So I just, full disclosure, I think we were all playing. We were a little bit timid because
Hmm.
we hadn't gotten together on a stage, and there were still issues of like we all had masks on, and then the people in the we had to do tests, and then we took the masks off to play, and I honestly felt a little nervous. I don't know what's going on, and so that first 2 days where we rehearsed and we recorded that concert, they were it was quite an adjustment, and
Hmm.
I I think this whole month of October as it unfolded, we became a little bit more comfortable. But we have to also remind ourselves not to be cavalier, not to forget that we have to really, really be safe.
Absolutely. We're talking about the sound of democracy. It's going to be the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra Septet Tuesday evening, and you can get it live, or you can get it online for $20 per household, and they'll give you a link ahead of time, and that link remains available for 72 hours, so you can watch it again and again if you'd like to. But uh, talk a little bit about the piece itself, the project itself, and how it came to be, and maybe what it means to you. I mean, you've done the presidential suite, and that was something towards democracy, obviously. Maybe just talk a little bit about the piece itself and what it means to you.
Well, we didn't know much about it going into it. We just knew that we were playing something that Wynton had written about democracy, and so and to follow up our whole tour, we did that piece and some other pieces that we all contributed that mostly had to do with democracy or freedom, different
Hmm.
forms of freedom. It's an 8 movement piece, and each movement, Wynton has a different theme, has a different, sort of dedication to different aspects of democracy, and a lot of it is around this time. So, for example, one of the pieces is dedicated to who we call J-Bat, Jonathan Batiste, a pianist who is also from New Orleans, and you might know him from the Stephen Colbert Show. But
Sure.
he Wynton said that he was out. It's like seeing him out in the streets, part of protests, and playing his melodica, whatever that is, um, and things like that. Just seeing people like this who are successful, but they're out there in the streets and expressing themselves. And so that piece was written for him, just as like a dedication to that type of involvement and um, activity. And there was one that was based on the phrase "Black Lives Matter," which is a slogan that we've heard over and over again at this time, and it's important. And uh, but it's like there are so many different things behind it. It's a slogan. Is it an organization? Is it an idea? Is it a freedom? Is it you know what I mean? It's like these questions that Wynton has about a slogan like that and how it can be misused, how it can be misrepresented, and how for some people it means freedom, for other people it means other things. So it's interesting. So one of the movements was based on that. So that's kind of an example of. He has one about all the percussion players who get out in the streets and they play tambourines, and um, it's interesting. And we part and musically, one of the ideas that Wynton had was that to be together. It's like often when we play in these situations, we have our solos, which we do separately. Like we have a melody or some kind of theme, and then we play individually. We play our solos. But one of the things that we really explored on this piece was how we might play together, how we improvise together, how we pass things around, or how we try to listen to each other and in a different way and improvise based on some are more supportive, some are taking the lead. So that was a challenge too, just to kind of have a little bit of a different approach to the music in terms of how we improvise.
Hmm.
It kind of made us, it really inspired us and forced us in a way to listen to each other in a different way and be more responsive, which I think is important right now, especially in this political climate of how we can try to figure out ways to come together while we're
Sure.
in a divisive point in history.
And that's again Tuesday night, Sound of Democracy, premiere of that nice piece, Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra Septet, 7:30 Tuesday night. Hancher is putting it on. Obviously, $20 per household, and they will send you a link ahead of time, and that will remain in effect for 72 hours. So you got plenty of opportunity to watch that and experience what should be a very fantastic piece. Talk a little bit about what else you got going on. I know you've been doing the small group thing. In fact, I think you just had a gig on Friday with Ben Ellison and Steve Cardenas. You've been doing that trio thing. I guess the last one was the music of, I forget who it was now, Leonard Bernstein.
You're so
Right?
good. Yeah. It
My
was
mind still works. Do you have any
no
more
COVID law.
any more projects with those guys left? I've met both of those guys. They've been at the Iowa City Jazz Festival numerous times, and a couple of great guys, great players too. And those projects are really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. So it's a trio that we love. We've done 2 records. One was under Ben's name, and it was called Quiet Revolution, and it was mainly Jim Hall, Jimmy Jufrey's music. We do a couple of originals, but that's how the group got started a few years ago when we started playing Jim Hall's music. And so the next release was under my name, but it's really the same thing, and it's West Side Story songs, but we call it Somewhere Else, and it's just a very loose version of all these great songs from West Side Story, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest musicals ever written. Music is just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
We love playing in this band, and in fact, right now it's so funny because on my Google Calendar or whatever like that, I have some gigs in there that were canceled, obviously due to the pandemic, and they keep popping up every day, like trio in Seychelles Jazz Festival in Portugal and or in Poland. And as I keep saying, each day I keep getting these reminders of how we were supposed to be touring right now, and we're not, obviously, but we did this gig at Birdland, which aired on Friday live, and it was a set of music. And I think you can go and you can watch it just like the Hancher program. You can I think pay $20 for the household and watch it. I believe the link is still good for a while. And again, this was like, aside from the Wynton thing, this is the only other time that I've been able to get in the same room with musicians, a full group, and play something. So it was something, and another kind of emotional experience for me, just to be able to hear all the vibrations together. This is a trio that I love, and the 3 of us, Ben Ellison, Steve Cardenas, we've agreed that moving forward, we're going to try to do much more with this group.
Good.
Yeah.
You and Ben go back to the Jazz Composers Collective, right? Back in, that's probably not still a going thing, I don't suppose, but
it is sort of in concept, but we don't do the concerts. We did it for 13 years, where we presented several concerts a year and composed new music. And as we got busier individually, we just sort of kind of put aside the whole concert series.
That was a great group back then that he had, you guys, and great to listen to that still today. Usually this is the point where I ask, what do you got going on next, Ted? But obviously, have you been doing some writing?
I am. I'm going to tell you because I'm so excited about this project.
Oh, great.
Glenn Close, who read one of the speeches on Presidential Suite,
right,
has been a collaborator a little bit off and on with Jazz Lincoln Center. And when we did that, we started to talk about a bigger piece that we would collaborate, that she and I would collaborate on. So she would create the concept for it, and I would write the music, and she invited guests, and it's called Transformation. And it comes at an incredible time, really, but where I think transformation, just a concept that is such a poignant idea, but it embraces transformation in many different ways. So it's the transformation of a white supremacist to becoming best friends with a Jewish man. It's the concept of a woman incarcerated for 40 years and what it's like to get out of jail. My son, who's transgender, was born Emily, and it's his coming out letter about being transgender. It's a lot of different concepts and people featured. We have guests like Wayne Brady, Amy Irving, of course, Glenn. And so we did a concert in late January of all this music, and we recorded it live, and I've been editing it, and we're going to release that about a year after the original performance in early January. transformation is a theme that might be dealt with in January. I'm not sure. We'll see. But regardless, it's a project that Glenn has put so much of her soul into, and I'm excited about it. Like Presidential Suite, it's a big project, but it's even longer and more involved and more personal. So look for that in January. We'll be releasing that as a 2 CD set.
That's great. Looking forward to it. And
Thanks.
it's weird that, and CDs usually take about, these projects usually take about a year from recording to when they come out and in the stores and stuff. And we're coming up on March real quick. So we're going to be running out of stuff of CDs and things to, you know what I mean? I mean, and things recorded up through, I guess, March. And after that, there hasn't been any recording going on. So where's all my stuff going to come from, Ted?
And, people are trying to figure out different ways of dealing with this situation. I think everybody wants to get back into the recording studio with their projects. I know that a long time ago, this is just, Matt Wilson, the drummer, I'm sure you know him.
Sure.
He and I went in the studio, improvised a bunch, like 4 years ago, just improvised for 3 hours. And I took all of that music and I've been sitting with it. And during this pandemic, I took one of the tracks, just him and me playing. And then I passed it around to a bunch of different musicians and asked them just to listen to it and put on something. So a young bassist named Hannah Marks, Marcus Printup, the trumpet player, Meg Okura, the violinist, they all laid down stuff kind of based on improvisation and based on what they were listening to. And we created a track that then Matt Balatsaris, who used to own Palmetto Records, he mixed for us. And so we kind of not released it, we just put it out there on social media. But I think the idea of maybe more of this virtual recording stuff, it's just tricky because we want it to be good quality. And I'm sure if people start presenting stuff to you to play, you're going to be like, not sure about the quality of this, but it represents a time and it's important.
Yeah, I see some of those virtual things where they can do a whole big band and they're all right up there on the screen. And actually some of those sound pretty good, but I don't know what, putting it on a CD or putting it out for general consumption. I don't know what the path would be to that, but
yeah. And people want to get back in the studio, and I think are figuring out ways to do it now that people have filtration systems, understand about distancing and masks, and there's studios have booths and ways of keeping plexiglass and all that. But it just it's sort of sad that it's going to be a while before we can just go back.
I sing in a community choir, and that's singers really can't do much together like that anymore. I mean, people are finding ways to do things like that, and hopefully that'll come in the next few months or so. But it's a sad thing that we all can't do our thing right now. But I guess we just be patient and be safe, and we'll do it when we can, I suppose.
Yeah, and thanks to you for continuing on. And I mean, you're providing a lot of music and good feelings, so thank you.
Absolutely. Our main focus here is the premiere of the Sound of Democracy. That's Tuesday night. Hancher is putting it on, the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra Septet with Wynton and Ted and the rest. It's $20 per household. It's 7:30 Tuesday night. You can get a link from Hancher ahead of time, and they'll hook you up, and you can watch that at 7:30 Tuesday night, or you can watch it anytime 72 hours after. That's what you're going to get with your $20. So it's actually a pretty good bargain. I mean, you're spending $20 to get your whole family around and see it. So, and
Right.
It is the premiere of this great piece. So Ted, I want to thank you for taking some time out today and kind of explaining what you're being up to, and the project that we're going to be watching Tuesday night, and kind of bringing us up to date on some other things that you're doing. And we're looking forward to all your stuff in the coming years and months.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me, and thanks again for everything. So, yeah, continue on forward.